Florian, your new film Never Look Away is Germany's official submission for the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. It's an honor that you won for your first film, The Lives of Others. Um, this is such a sprawling, expansive film that's about art and love and politics and so many other different things. Tell us a little bit about where the idea for the movie came from.
Yeah, well, thanks for that question, Zach. It came from wanting to do a film about human creativity. I was always amazed how people who do great creative things, like paint amazing pictures, how they can take the trauma of their life and turn it into something so beautiful. It seems to me almost like a kind of alchemy, that you would take the lead of your suffering and turn it into the gold of art. And I was amazed particularly by this one painter, Gerhard Richter, a German painter who experienced the bombing of Dresden as a child, and all of his friends were killed, and his aunt was murdered by the Nazis, and his everything, and he would just turn that into the most beautiful paintings, and do a painting of the English bombers flying above his head, dropping the bombs, and in a way find a kind of crazy type of beauty in this and overcome his own trauma. So that was kind of at the beginning of the idea.
The script unfolds like a great epic novel. I mean, you span a lot of time here from like the pre-war Germany to World War II to post-war Germany. Can you just talk a bit about, I guess, structuring the screenplay and how and what that process was like?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I put a lot of care into that because I always feel like you can't make people like the story that you're telling, but you can, in a way, it's your obligation, I think, as a filmmaker, to make them like the way the story is told. And I think it always should be part of the filmmaking to hold the viewer's attention. When for example at test screenings, I don't look at what people liked or didn't like, but what I do look at is, are there any walkouts? For instance, I always aim for 0 walkouts, because we should hold an audience's attention whether they like the story or not, and that has to do with weaving the things together in a certain way. So always a scene should never. I always find that a film ends kind of or loses its forward momentum if you don't know where you are, why you're there. It has to be somehow, everything has to be linked, and that's something I put a lot of care of when plotting the whole thing, to make sure that it's really like a carefully built chain armor, and where everything is linked together, or maybe even just like a chain, where one leads directly into the other. And that makes it hard sometimes to cut a film down, but it will make, I think, and I trust that it will make it interesting throughout. I mean, it's something that people as different as Almodovar or James Cameron use. It's a certain way of writing and sculpting scripts.
Well, I mean, did you know going in that this was going to be a longer movie, that it was going to have this kind of epic scope, or did you discover that?
I didn't think it was going to be, I mean, we're almost as long as things like, I mean, a little shorter, but as Schindler's List or Titanic, or Godfather Part 2 or something. I didn't think it was going to be that long. But the interesting thing is, if I take any more away, it actually starts feeling long. If I add anything more, it starts feeling long. It's kind of there is a sweet spot for every film, and you kind of know when you have it, and that's not just a subjective thing. My editors or anybody involved in the film will feel exactly the same way. You have to be very careful at the end of an editing process, because suddenly taking away a little too much or leaving a little too much in can actually make the film collapse.
Was there a special relevancy that you thought this story had to today? I mean, I'm not sure exactly when you first conceived of the idea and how
Yeah.
long it took to develop, but I mean, was there something about what's going on in the world today that you thought gave this story of looking back at the past and looking back at Nazis a certain relevance?
Um, I sadly, tragically, those things always have relevance. I mean, I think that dark, diabolic impulse in the world of people just wanting people to be only of their own kind and everybody else to shouldn't be there, or should be eliminated, or a different type of thinking is dangerous, and all that. That it's a dark streak in human nature, and so that will again and again rear its ugly head. That's just, I think we just have to accept that. So, but I try to stay clear also in the films, and also in discussions when I'm at a dinner party or so. I don't really love talking about current politics because it's always so supercharged. People have such incredibly strong opinions about everything in present day, and I think the best way to talk about current day politics is always to look into the past and talk about history, because history does repeat itself, and people are a lot less emotional when it comes to history, and therefore you do stand a chance of changing people's minds and making them see things your way if you explain historical context. But I will say one thing about current politics. I very often, when I see our political leaders making unbelievable mistakes, I wish there were, some kind of obligatory test that politicians had to take in just the history of their country and of the world before they were allowed to run for office. Like a citizenship test for people when they become an American citizen. Like that, every politician or a German citizen, we should have that test for politicians. Yeah, you can run for Congress or for president or for anything, but you have to pass this exam. It doesn't have to be a difficult exam. And, you don't even have to read books. Watch these 12 films. I'll happy to contribute to the reading list or the watching list. But I do think that there's a kind of obliviousness of history, which is often very dangerous. I mean, one thing which has never, ever worked in history is targeting any kind of group, country, minority, and hurting that group, country's, minorities' pride. That is something that has always led to war and an incredible conflict and animosity that will rankle for centuries. So and there are so many examples of that I'm always surprised when I see a politician disrespecting another country or group or anything like that.
Yeah, it is kind of striking, the willful ignorance that we see from many people in elected office.
But it's all over the world. It's not just, and I mean, it's something like I would feel much better about Germany if our chancellor were someone who was not I think she's a physicist or something like that, and if she had instead spent a little more time, interested in culture and history, because I just see very little evidence of that.
Right. I'm with you on that one. We have our own problems. One of the things that this movie shares with great epics of the past is that it takes these big events and you kind of see them as viewed through the eyes of ordinary people. In this case, it's a romance that's happening between your two lead characters. Can you talk a bit about, I guess, crafting this love story within the context of history?
Well, yeah. Thanks for that question. I think that I see it very much as being at the center of the story. So I'm happy that that you're zeroing in on that. One of the things that to me was at the core of the story is young people. And this is this film that talks of people, mainly in their 20s. They have it very, very difficult. We often idealize that, looking back. Oh, how great it was in our 20s. It wasn't that great. It's a terrible time. You're young. You have all the energy. You have no money. You have no power. You don't exactly know who you are. You're not sure yet of where your abilities lie, and you are at the mercy of people in positions of power who have, power, position, greater eloquence, greater certainty about who they are, who try to dominate you, who try to tell you what to do, and it's a very, very difficult time. And there's one field, in a way where you were free of all that, and that is love, and also sexuality, which is why I really wanted to put this put love in the center of this film, to show that even though these young people are attacked and instrumentalized by all these older, more powerful figures, and by the Nazis and by the communists and by people, wanting to use them in the art market and whatever, they have one area where they're untouchable in a way, and that is love and sexuality, where they can be vulnerable and open and be there for each other. And I think one of the reasons why older people are somehow have such clear ideas of whom young people should love and how, is because it's an incredible power. It's the one field where these young people are superior to the older people. They have that they have that domain which is all their own. So there's pretty explicit love and sex scenes in the film, but those were very, very important to me. They carry an important message.
Yeah, I mean, you see that that kind of generational struggle really portrayed beautifully in the conflict between the couple and Sebastian Koch's character. Can you just talk a bit more about his character and how he kind of tries to take these two apart?
Yeah, Sebastian Koch is an actor that I've worked with on The Lives of Others. He's someone I really admire. He's so precise and so talented and charming. And I knew that I was going to write a very monstrous character, this awful Nazi, this super brain, super professor, extreme ideologue who has these ideas of racial purity and superior genes, and everything else should be destroyed. And in a way has almost bred his family like a dog breeder would breed the perfect dog, and now his beautiful daughter falls in love with this artist whom he sees as weak and incapable of protecting his daughter, and melancholy and short, and just completely unacceptable. And I knew that I needed Sebastian Koch's charm to make that character in any way digestible to the audience. If he didn't have, he has a lot of screen time, and if he wasn't in some way fascinating, just because he's Sebastian, I don't think that people would go along for the ride. But Sebastian has that quality that you just want to observe him and to watch him. I often feel like a schoolgirl in love or something when I'm sitting at dinner with him. I just have to watch him because he's so attractive, and that is, even though he does all these terrible things in the film, I think audiences feel the same way about him, that he's somehow mysteriously attractive even though he does all these awful things.
Right. I wanted to ask you just a bit about the visual style of the movie. You work with the great Caleb Deschanel as your cinematographer. Can you just talk a bit about what your ideas were for visually conveying the period and for just telling the story visually in general?
Yes. Caleb was someone that I'd thought of from the moment, actually from the moment I had the idea. My first experience of cinematography as art came through Caleb. I think I was 7 years old when I watched the Black Stallion, his first film as a DP, in an open air theater in New York as a kid, and it was so powerful and so beautiful that I really understood that lighting and camera, that can be an art form, and I'd always wanted to work with him. And now, I was making a film that was about images and about art, about beauty, and I knew I needed somebody who was a painter with light on that level. And I don't know, the first name that came to mind was Caleb Deschanel, so I contacted him, and I knew that he passes on almost everything. He's extremely selective. And so I said, look, I know that if you do something, I have to book you years ahead of time. Well, I'm about to write this thing. And I started telling him the story in great detail, much greater detail than even the film. So I think we sat there for 5 hours in the farm shop in Brentwood. And I pitched to him this movie, and he listened so carefully. And then at the end he said, look, this is exactly the kind of thing that I've been thinking about all my life. What is at the origin of human creativity? I think this explores it and doesn't just try to boil it down to one thing, like, oh, this guy's brother died and therefore he started creating this or that. This monocausal thing that you often have in artists' biographies. That's not how it is. It's never one single thing. It's many things. It's an entire lifetime. And he really he really responded to that and said, even as I was telling it, he already started having images in his head. And so he said, okay, I'm on board. I don't think he knew yet how tough it would be to be in Germany for half a year and in Poland and in the Czech Republic and, having to plow through snow and heat and the wilderness. But he was unbelievable. And he's one of those rare perfectionists who actually managed to get it perfect. It seems like he's going for some elusive goal, but he actually gets it every single time. He's someone that I admire immensely, and I hope that people will, see what he's achieved there. I think he's outdone himself.
Absolutely. Before I let you go, I just wanted to ask you, I mentioned at the offset, you were an Oscar winner for your film, The Lives of Others. That was your very first feature film. So can you just talk a bit about what that recognition meant for you and for the film as well?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it meant that the very first time that I got to meet Cate Blanchett, I got to kiss her because she was the one who, who presented me the award on stage. It made a lot of things easier. Let's say it made the least pleasant aspect of filmmaking, which is raising the money for your films, which is always hard. It made that a little easier, or quite a bit easier, and that's why it's an incredible blessing. It doesn't change the way that I think about my films, or certainly about myself, because I know that at the end of the day, it's a little bit crazy to have films run against each other as if it were, a 100-meter sprint. I kind of understand Woody Allen's or Marlon Brando's position of saying, this is not sports. It's a subjective choice. And I know it myself as an Academy Award voter. Sometimes a few years into voting, I asked myself, wait a second, why did I vote for that film again? And you kind of completely changed I've completely changed my mind about a movie. But I know that it just helps. I remember one thing that's, after I got the award, you're led behind stage, and there I ran into Steven Spielberg, and I'd met him once before at a dinner at the Los Angeles Film Critics Association, Los Angeles Film Critics Circle, I think it's called, and they and we'd spoken a little bit, and then now he said to me, Florian, you'll never get over this. I thought, well, what do you mean? It sounded so mysterious almost. Somebody said, well, I can tell you one thing from experience since I won this award a few years ago. He said, you're now, although it doesn't change the way you think about yourself, it changes the way everybody else thinks about you. You're now an Oscar winner. Your children will forever be the children of an Oscar winner. Your grandchildren will forever be the grandchildren of an Oscar winner. You'll never get over this. And I said, it's a positive thing, but you accept that now. And I thought it was an interesting and unusual thing to say, but it's proven true. So it is a positive thing. It's a wonderful label to have. And it's a label that makes things easier, but it's a label.
Well, Florian, thank you so much, and congratulations on the new film. I appreciate
Thank you very much. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate your time and your interest. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye now.